My name is Marcus, and this happened 6 months ago when I moved into a studio apartment in Denver, Colorado. I'm a grad student, broke as hell, so when I found this place for $800 a month, I jumped on it immediately. The building was old, like 1960s old, and the apartment was on the first floor. Small kitchen, tiny bathroom, but it had this huge window that let in natural light, which I loved. The landlord told me someone lived directly above me, an older woman, retired, very quiet. He said I'd probably never even hear her. That should have been my first red flag. Because in 6 weeks of living there, I never once heard footsteps above me, not a single sound. And trust me, these floors were old and creaky. You could hear everything. I'd see her sometimes, though. She'd be standing at her window looking down at the parking lot. Always the same spot, always the same time, around 7 p.m. I'd wave once or twice when I caught her looking, but she never waved back. Just stared. My girlfriend Emma thought I was overthinking it. She'd say old people are just like that sometimes, observing the world because they don't have much else going on. And maybe she was right, but something felt off from day one. About 3 weeks in, I started noticing my mail was being opened. Not torn open violently or anything, just carefully unsealed and then placed back in my mailbox. At first I thought maybe the mailman was checking addresses or something, but then it kept happening. Credit card statements, random letters from my university, even a birthday card from my mom. All opened. I mentioned it to the landlord and he said he'd look into it. A week later, nothing changed. So I set up my phone one day to record my mailbox from inside my apartment through the window. I left for class, came back 4 hours later, and checked the footage. Around 2 p.m., I watched this older woman, my upstairs neighbor, walk down the stairs with keys in her hand. She opened the mailbox panel with what looked like a master key, pulled out my mail, and then just stood there reading it in the hallway for like 5 full minutes. Then she put everything back and went upstairs. I felt my stomach drop. This woman had a key to my mailbox and was actively going through my personal information. I immediately called my landlord. He sounded annoyed, like I was bothering him, and said he'd talk to her about it. That was it. No urgency, no concern. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what she was looking for. What was she reading? Why did she care about my electric bill or university letters? Emma stayed over that night and told me to just get my locks changed and maybe get a P.O. box for important mail. Smart advice, but I was still creeped out. 2 days later, I came home from the library around 10 p.m. The hallway light was flickering, which it did sometimes, so I didn't think much of it. But when I got to my door, I noticed it was unlocked. I always lock my door. I'm paranoid about it. I pushed it open slowly and called out to see if anyone was inside. No response. I walked in, and everything looked normal at first. My laptop was still on my desk. My TV was there. Nothing seemed stolen. But then I noticed my bedroom closet door was open. I never leave it open because it doesn't close properly and it bothers me. I walked over and looked inside. My clothes were pushed to one side like someone had been going through them. My backpack was unzipped on the floor, even though I always keep it zipped. And then I saw it. On the shelf above the hanging rack, there was a small camera, like one of those cheap wireless ones you can buy online. It wasn't mine. I grabbed it and immediately called the police. When they arrived, I explained everything. The mail situation, the unlocked door, and now this camera. They took it as evidence and said they'd investigate. One officer asked if I had any proof of who put it there. I told them about the footage of my neighbor going through my mail. They said they'd talk to her. About an hour later, they knocked on my door again. They said they spoke with the woman upstairs and she denied everything. Said she had no idea about a camera, didn't know anything about my mail, and claimed I was harassing her. Harassing her. I couldn't believe it. The officer said unless they found her fingerprints on the camera or had concrete evidence she entered my apartment, there wasn't much they could do. They told me to change my locks and consider moving. That was their solution. I did change the locks the very next day. Got a deadbolt installed too. I also moved my laptop and any valuables to Emma's place just in case. But I still had to live there. I still had to sleep there. And I was terrified. For about a week, things were quiet. No more mail incidents, no weird sounds. I started to relax a little bit. Maybe the police visit scared her off. Maybe she realized she got caught and backed off. Then one night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to my phone buzzing. It was a text from an unknown number. It said, "You shouldn't have called the police." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't respond. I just stared at the message. About 30 seconds later, another text came through. "I'm watching you right now." I jumped out of bed and looked around my apartment. All my curtains were closed. My door was locked. I checked the new deadbolt twice. Everything was secure. But then I heard it. A single knock on my ceiling, directly above my bed. I stood there frozen. Then another knock, and another. Slow and deliberate. She was knocking on her floor, which was my ceiling, right above where I slept. I wanted to scream back or bang on the ceiling myself, but I was too scared. Instead, I grabbed my keys and my phone and I left. I went straight to Emma's apartment and told her everything. The next morning, I called the landlord and told him I was breaking my lease immediately. He threatened to keep my security deposit. I told him I'd lawyer up if he tried because I had evidence of harassment and criminal activity. He finally agreed to let me out of the lease. I moved out that same week. Emma and her roommate helped me pack everything while it was still daylight. The whole time I kept looking up at the window above mine, expecting to see her watching us. But the curtains stayed closed. I reported the text messages to the police and gave them the unknown number. They said they'd look into it, but I never heard back. To this day, I don't know if they ever did anything. About a month after I moved out, I got curious and drove by the building. I know I shouldn't have, but I needed to see it one more time. When I pulled up, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. There was a "For Rent" sign on the first floor window, my old apartment. But also, there was a sign on the second floor window too, her apartment. Both units were empty. I called my old landlord from the car and asked him what happened to the woman who lived above me. He sounded uncomfortable and said she moved out suddenly one night. Didn't give notice, just left. He said when he went into her apartment to check it, he found something disturbing. All over her walls, she had printed photos. Photos of the parking lot taken from her window, photos of the building entrance, and photos of my window. Dozens of them. Some were zoomed in. Some had dates written on them. He said it looked like she'd been documenting everyone who lived below her for years. He told me he reported it to the police, but since she was gone, there wasn't much they could do. He apologized for not taking me seriously earlier. Said he had no idea she was that unstable. I never found out where she went. I never got an explanation for why she targeted me. Emma thinks maybe she was just a lonely person who became obsessed with her neighbors as a way to feel connected to something. But I don't know. The camera, the mail, the texts, that felt like more than loneliness. That felt like something darker. I still think about it sometimes, especially when I'm alone in my new apartment. I check my locks twice now before bed. I keep my curtains closed at night, and I never ever ignore my gut feeling about a place anymore. If you're renting somewhere and something feels wrong, trust yourself. Don't wait for proof. Don't wait for it to get worse. Just leave. Because I almost didn't, and I'm lucky that's the worst that happened to me.